Welcome, Marvelous fam! Silent Hill is an ultra-successful horror franchise with video game anthologies that have spun movies, books, and comics. However, the first of the comics had hardly lived up to Silent Hill's towering terror standards. But when Silent Hill Past Life dropped, everything changed. Silent Hill always poses a mystery to fans. What is this town? And why did it become a place for these twisted paranormal activities? In Silent Hill Past Life, we find our answers. But a caution for those going in. No story before has been shrouded with as much psychosis as Past Life. It quickly takes the crown of the go-to comic to explore Silent Hill's origins with all the atmospheric horror visual you can consume. Silent Hill Past Life goes back in time, much before the traumatic events that plagued young Alessa, whose murder set off the events of the original Silent Hill. It follows the trail of a cold-blooded murderer who has found the light and is trying to change his way, but his past won't let him go. The creators have captured the madness of the Silent Hill canon beautifully and put their own spin on it with Jebediah's ironic tale, expanding the lore's history in a terrifying fashion. So, let us get into the story and explore Silent Hill Past Life in detail and the origins insights it gives us. Before we go on though, please support us by subscribing to our channel. It's a small click for you, but it means a lot to us. Thank you. Let us jump right in. The world of Silent Hill. Silent Hill was a single survival horror video game published by Konami in 1999. Alongside Resident Evil, it went to the very top of the horror games genre with its hazy, mysterious setting and gripping psych horror themes. This led to sequels, movie adaptation, comics, basically a whole franchise. Silent Hill 2 was released in 2001 and is often touted as the best video game of the series. Most recently, Silent Hill 2 has recently had a remake. It has also been adapted for a live action by director Christopher Gann and is due for release, though they are yet to announce a date. So, Silent Hill is a small town near Toluca Lake that is often implied to have beautiful natural surroundings, but we rarely got to see that side of it in the games. What we saw was a town heavily cloaked in fog with some weird things happening to people who went in there. Silent Hill has been known to house a cult that partakes in terrible atrocities, such as burning young girls to bring their god back. As we delve further into the Silent Hill rabbit hole, we find that it has two supernatural worlds spun within it, and they are responsible for the strange horror that people experience within it. The thick fog cover of the town often acts as a doorway to these worlds. These are the Fog World and Otherworld. Some call them alternate realities, others parallel dimension. But one thing is for sure, they both bring a person's deepest fears and regrets alive in the form of living, breathing demons. The person gets trapped within them as though living in a real-life nightmare. As far as the story and visual illustration go, no other comic has been able to take one through this supernatural menace that is Silent Hill, as sincerely as Silent Hill Past Life has. Silent Hill Past Life. Silent Hill Past Life is a comic by Tom Waltz, a war veteran whose active duty background is evident in the palpable angst he creates with the story. The comic was published by IDW Publishing. With the exception of Sinner's Reward, all the earlier Silent Hill comics had been charged with unfitting stories and artwork. They just didn't capture the feel of Silent Hill, as gamers and horror fans imagined it in their mind. But things began to look up when Waltz took to the pen. Silent Hill Past Life is the tale of Jebediah Foster, a cowboy with a dire past that he's desperate to forget. In the past, he had literally been the devil's hand. There was too much blood on his hands for redemption. But when he found the kind widow, Esther, his life changed. They decided to move from the Dakota Territory and start over. But unfortunately, the destination they chose was Silent Hill. So, what happens next? Well, let us get into this tale of madness and horror. The story. It was the year 1867. The Civil War was still hot around many places in the United States when Jebediah Foster and his wife Esther decided to leave the Dakota Territory. Jebediah had committed many horrific crimes aided by the drink. He was a raging alcoholic who had murdered, pillaged, and thieved all his life. Esther met Jeb, as she lovingly called him, when he was gashed in a fight and brought to a doctor whom she worked for. She cared for him and brought him back to life. It was like he had been touched by an angel. He left the drink and tried to change his ways. They got married, and Esther became pregnant soon after. They decided to move far away from the shadows of the past and start a new life. Silent Hill became the easy choice for that permanent getaway. Esther had inherited a house in Silent Hill, and they decided to go there and set it up. The comic opens just as Jeb and Esther are about to cross into Silent Hill. A man on horseback approaches them, and we get a niggling feeling there is something off about him. He introduces himself as Howard Blackwood, the postmaster of Silent Hill. He tells them the Monroe Farm, which is the spot Esther has inherited at the edge of the town, has been abandoned for a good minute and will need some generous fixing. Through this first exchange itself, we get an insight into Jeb's character, and also Esther's. Esther is a God-fearing woman who is kind and sensitive. Jeb, on the flip side, is as rough as they come. He refers to Howard as a Negro several times, though without malice, but also without tact. And it isn't until later in the story that Esther lightly admonishes him about it, and he stops doing that. This shows not only that Jeb has yet to learn better through life, but also that he listens to Esther without question. Though he is much like a jagged old rock throughout the story, he finds enough sheen within to listen to what his compassionate wife has to say. By the time the couple arrives at the rundown Monroe farm, it has gotten pretty dark. We learn that Silent Hill was once called the place of the silent spirits, and there are a lot of insinuations about the other world in the text. This other world that exists within it has twisted into form by the bloodshed that once marred Silent Hill, the killings of the Indians, and the horrors of Civil War. The spirits have claimed this place, which was once a Native American sacred land, for their own. As Jeb and Esther ride in through Silent Hill, the anticipation swells the eerie faces of the spirits that watch them. Their time had come, and they were ready to avenge the wrongs of the past. The Monroe farm is a mess, as the postmaster has rightly warned them. As they try to settle in for the night, Jeb goes into the barn to fix it up for his tired horse, leaving Esther alone. The other world cast its spell. As Jeb explored the barn, he heard another speak in the back, but it was his own voice, like a doppelganger. But when he turns to see where the sound came from, there's nothing there. Suddenly, he finds a pot of liquor, which looks as though it was set there, especially for him. A vision from his past comes alive. He is surrounded by a sea of dead Indians. His superior commends him, and he drinks to that, washing away his conscience. Esther's cry breaks the reverie. Jeb rushes into the house to see what's going on. He finds Esther shaking in a room as Indian woman, Inola, stands in a corner with a large knife in bloody hand. Her smile is so creepy, even DC's Joker might have to take notes. While Esther controls Jeb from erupting over the intrusion, Inola leaves after telling Jeb she just wanted to return his knife. The connection between Inola and Jeb's past begins to take shape here. In issue number 2 of Past Life, Jeb begins to doubt that he could ever leave his evil past behind. The next day, when he goes into the dusty town of Silent Hill, more characters from his past take shape, crowding up his present. There is Jonas Leek, the tavern owner, Helen, his wife, and Sheriff Creviston. It appears that Jeb has forgotten a lot of his past due to his alcohol abuse, and maybe even locked up and sealed some terrible memories in a dormant corner of his mind. But the other world casts its own spell. These characters talk with Jeb in puzzles and call him by his old name, Hellrider. Their eyes are menacing and give away some of the mystery the story is building up till now. But thankfully, Tom Waltz keeps enough to go around. Esther, who is back at the farm doing some household chores, appears to be caught in the otherworldly net that was spread for Jeb. She sees a vision of a pregnant Indian woman in labor, her mother urging her to push, as they did not have much time. The background is smeared in colors of fire and blood, signifying a violent attack. The artwork is rife with pain, struggle, and urgency. And even if you're not into the Silent Hill franchise, you must check out this particular comic for its brilliant artwork alone. As Esther snaps back to reality, we watch Inola standing over her, coaxing her in her creepy way. Inola's presence always stages dread. We are always wondering what that old woman would do next. Another disturbing spirit that lurks around the panels throughout the comic is Awanita, a towering slim shadow of an Indian woman with a skull face, whom Inola calls her daughter. She appears pregnant at times, like the girl in Esther's vision. At some points, it feels more like Awanita is sharing Esther's pregnancy with her. She is easily the most unsettling presence in the comic. Okay, here's a quick warning from my experience with Past Life. Do not read this one in the lamplight at night, or you'll spend the whole night spooked out of your mind, waiting for the sun to come up. A shout out must go to Minton Matthew, the third here, for the artwork that takes one into the soul of the evil Jeb's past that is manifested in Silent Hill. Even though the town itself isn't captured in much detail, the psych horror vibe is just awesome and all over each and every panel. Jebediah begins to understand Silent Hill. Jebediah begins to understand Silent Hill. In the third issue, Jeb relives the stories of his past. First off, his affair with Helene. Then, Helene's husband Jonas went into a rage when he caught them red-handed. We really get to watch what a vile monster Jeb was here. He offhandedly uses Helene as a shield when Jonas tries to stab him and then blows his head off with a rifle. He leaves a bleeding Helene there to die alongside her husband, walking out of that blood-splattered room without a care in the world. Hellrider, the name he went by when he was this cold-hearted killer, was one he wore as a badge of honor. But now, in his new life with Helene, it's just a reminder of his past he can do without. Jeb meets Howard, the postmaster, again as he chops some firewood near the farm. In this encounter, Jeb opens up about his inner demon, and Howard tells him he had done some killing of his own, though it was only to save himself. But the weight of that deed never went away. Jeb has a vision of his men and him annihilating an Indian village. Then he sees the same scene Esther had, a pregnant Indian woman in labor, with her mother trying to hasten the birth. At this point, we have kind of begun to work out that the Indian woman in the vision is Awanita, with her mother Inola. Jeb finds the women amid childbirth, and while we are left to imagine what happens next, it's apparent that Jeb killed both the women in what is probably the most shocking point of his past reveal. We also get a glimpse into Howard, the postmaster's anatomy here. He appears to be a spirit unlike some of the others plaguing Jeb's mind. One gets the feeling that he is himself stuck in the other world because of his own path. Esther is near full term now, and the madness of Inola and Awanita prowling about the Monroe farm is getting to her. Jeb and her go to church in an attempt to soothe their heavy mind, but once there, Jeb finds the sheriff sitting across from him, eyeing him with a knowing smile. Jeb sinks into his past once again. He stole a man's sheep and killed the sheriff in cold blood for trying to take him in. Soon after, Jeb literally drags his lumbering wife out of the church, the full weight of his past now weighing him down. At this stage, things have gotten pretty intense, and the reader is fully invested in how these spirits plan on exacting their revenge on Jeb. We also get the feeling that in this other world of Silent Hill, the aggressors may have manifested from Jeb's own psyche, but they are very real now and can go to any lengths to make Jeb suffer. Jeb loses it. When Esther and her get back to the farm, he slips into the barn and takes the pot of whiskey he had found there. He chugs it down, once again trying to wash down his guilt with his old medicine. The climactic standoff. The last issue of Past Life opens at nightfall. Esther begins to have labor pains, just as all the demons Jeb had rolled up and pushed deep inside his closet come tumbling out with a vengeance. As Esther's pains take off, Inola appears with the ceiling-high Awanita in full-blown creepy mode, saying that they will help her deliver the baby. Esther yells for Jeb. A tipsy Jeb is jolted into soberness in the barn by her cry, but as he put down the whiskey to make for the house, the sultry Helene appears out of nowhere. She looks ready as ever with her corset and thigh-high boots replaced with flowing lingerie, but there is no mistaking the menace in her eyes. As she makes her moves on Jeb, Jeb tries to push Helene out of the way, even slitting her throat when she holds him back. But in the words of the immortal Count Dracula, it isn't easy to kill what is already dead. Meanwhile, Inola and Awanita take control of Esther, spreading her out for childbirth. Inola tells her Awanita will become a mother with Esther, and oh my god, Inola's wide, clowny smile when she does all this is the most chilling thing I've ever seen in print. Jeb is confronted by Jonas and the sheriff outside, and he tries to kill them, but the spirits stand back up, unperturbed, grinning at Jeb. The sheriff tells him what this is really all about. He says, when all's said and done, you reap what you sow. And they were after his child. He had taken Awanita's life and that of her unborn baby, and now she wanted that baby back. Inside the house, Awanita puts her spiky long fingers over Esther as she screams with pain. And we watch Esther turn into something like Awanita as she makes her final push. Jeb kicks the door in as Awanita reaches out inside Esther. The baby is born. It's a girl. Jeb tells Inola to take the baby and leave Esther and him alone. As she leaves, she says, blood for blood, life for life. We watch Jeb hold on to Esther, who appears to have lost a lot of blood. In the end, we are left with many questions. Is Esther dead? What about the baby Awanita? How on earth will that creepy spirit of Inola raise her? What are the fires raging through the town at the end? Trust me, you'll be going for a repeat read on this one. Marvelous verdict. Silent Hill Past Life gets really psychological. The combo of faded coloring and stain, the pregnant black spirit inked intermittently through the dark panels, and the use of frames that are complex and simple, all at the same time, really bring the warped nature of Silent Hill's otherworld to come alive. Past Life has a resounding theme. Can one truly change their ways without their past coming to hound them? And Walt spins this tale with sinister perfection. Every issue has intrigue and a cliffhanger to end it off. The story itself is thought-provoking, and you'll be tempted to reread it to fully encompass all the subtle tropes in there. This story adds to the Silent Hill lore by taking us back in time before the atrocities done to Alessa Gillespie with palpable artwork, which fully transports the reader into the psychosis brought upon the couple trying to run away from their past. A legit credit to the Silent Hill franchise. Past Life is a comic that every fan has just got to pick out and read. Alright, so that's it from us for now, but we cannot wait to hear your thoughts on this story, so do get busy in the comments. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to us if you haven't already. We'll see you on the next one. Bye now.